So picture this scenario for a second. You're scrolling online and you've just found it. I mean, the absolute dream job.
Oh, yeah. The one where you immediately start doing the math on the salary.
Exactly. The specific role that makes you want to, like, immediately update your entire professional wardrobe and start mapping out your brand new morning commute.
Right. You get completely invested.
You do. You spend hours meticulously crafting your application. You tweak literally every single bullet point. You attach your perfectly polished resume. You take a long, deep breath, and you hit send. And then, in the time it takes you to blink twice, bam.
Yep, bam.
You have already been judged, categorized, and potentially tossed straight into the digital recycling bin.
It's a really brutal reality to face right after that adrenaline high of hitting the send button.
It really is.
But honestly, that hyper-fast judgment, it's the invisible machinery of the modern job market.
Sounds incredibly dramatic, I know. But today, we are taking a deep dive into what is infamously known in the career space as the 6-second rule of recruitment.
It's a huge topic.
Massive. And we're pulling together some fascinating sources today. Talent management literature, cognitive psychology research, and some incredibly revealing eye-tracking studies.
Yeah, the eye-tracking data is wild.
It really is. So our mission today is threefold. First, we're going to demystify this 6-second rule and separate the actual scientific reality from, the motivational hype you constantly see on social media.
Right, because there's a lot of noise out there.
So much noise.
Yeah.
Second, we want to understand the actual cognitive psychology behind why recruiters make these lightning-fast decisions. And third, we are going to equip you with the actionable tools you need to survive this hyper-fast filter.
Which is the most important part, really.
Exactly.
Okay,
let's unpack this, because where does this oddly specific number 6 seconds even come from?
right.
Is it just a marketing gimmick meant to scare applicants?
Well, no, it's actually grounded in real empirical data, though. I mean, the landscape has shifted slightly over the years. To really understand it, we have to look back at the origins of the rule. That was back in 2012. It came from a set of really sophisticated eye-tracking studies conducted by an executive job platform called The Ladders.
Oh, okay.
And the methodology here is what makes it so credible. They didn't just send out a survey asking recruiters, how long do you spend reading a resume?
Because everyone would lie.
Exactly. Self-reported data on a core like that is notoriously unreliable. Everyone wants to believe they are, super thorough and fair.
Right. I spend at least 10 minutes per resume.
Exactly. So instead of asking, they actually placed eye-tracking technology on recruiters and mapped the literal heat signatures of their retinas as they worked through a stack of candidates.
This is intense.
It's very precise. And in that initial study, the technology clocked the recruiters spending an average of exactly 6 seconds on their initial scan before making a keep or trash decision.
6 seconds. I mean, you can't even read a fast food menu in 6 seconds, let alone evaluate a human being's entire professional history.
You cannot read it, no. And that is the fundamental shift in understanding how this entire process works. Interestingly, when the study was updated in 2018, that number had crept up just marginally to 7.4 seconds.
Oh, a whole 1.4 seconds extra. Generous.
Right, a slight improvement, but the core reality remains unchanged. And the reason for this hyperspeed, it isn't that recruiters are lazy or apathetic.
Which is the common assumption.
Yeah, but it's pure market saturation. They are utterly overwhelmed. I mean, they are dealing with hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications for a single vacancy.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that kind of volume. It makes me think about, mindlessly swiping on a dating app. You know that feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
You aren't analyzing their favorite books or pondering their 5-year plan.
Yeah.
You are looking at one picture, making a snap judgment based on a general vibe, and swiping left or right in a fraction of a second.
Well, it's a very similar mechanism, actually.
But I have to push back on this process being applied to careers. I mean, is this just superficial judgment? Or is there an actual method to the madness of scanning a decade of experience in 6 seconds?
What's fascinating here is the cognitive science at play. Human attention is a finite resource.
Right.
It is highly, highly limited, especially during repetitive screening tasks. If a recruiter tries to deeply, thoroughly read the first 50 resumes in a stack of 1,000, their brain will quite literally short-circuit from cognitive overload.
They'd be exhausted by noon.
Exactly. So to cope with that immense strain, the human brain basically shifts processing modes. It completely stops reading words sequentially and starts relying on visual patterns and heuristics.
Heuristics.
Right. Heuristics are essentially mental shortcuts. The brain scans for shapes, structures, and specific data points that basically signal safety or competence.
That makes a lot of sense if you think about it like driving on a highly familiar highway.
Okay, how so?
Well, when you're commuting home, you aren't carefully reading every single road sign or billboard, right?
Right.
You were just heuristically scanning the horizon for the familiar green blur of your specific exit sign.
Yeah, you just know what it looks like.
You know its shape, you know its location. But if the highway department suddenly redesigned your exit sign to be bright purple and placed it on the left side of the road, you would completely miss it because you weren't reading. You were scanning for a pattern.
That highway analogy is the perfect way to understand heuristics. The recruiter's brain is just cruising down the highway looking for the green exit signs of competence.
Right.
If your resume redesigns those signs or, hides them in a really dense block of text, the recruiter just speeds right past you.
So to figure out how to actually beat this 6-second rule, we have to understand exactly what those mental shortcuts are.
Yes, exactly.
We need to know where literally the recruiter's eyes are darting during those 6 to 7.4 seconds so we can put our green exit signs exactly where they are already looking.
And the eye-tracking heat maps are incredibly granular on this point. In that initial phase, you have to accept a hard truth. Humans do not read, they scan.
They scan.
And because of Western reading habits, they scan using very specific visual patterns, typically a Z or an F pattern.
Let's visualize that for a second. With the Z pattern, they start at the top left of the page, move straight across to the right, and their eyes dart diagonally down to the bottom left, and they scan across the bottom again, like literally physically drawing a Z on the page with their eyes.
That is the exact visual trajectory, yes.
Wow.
And the F pattern is really similar. They read the top line across, they drop down the left margin, read a shorter line across the middle, and then their eyes just plummet straight down the left side of the page.
Completely ignoring the right side.
Completely ignoring the right-hand margin. It is a pure survival mechanism for processing information quickly. And the study revealed something staggering about these patterns.
What's that?
During that Z or F scan, 80% of the recruiter's time, 80% of those 6 seconds, is spent looking at just 4 specific elements.
Just 4 elements out of an entire page of life experience, degrees, skills, everything.
Just 4.
That's crazy.
The heat maps glowed bright red on your name, your current professional title, your previous company, and your dates of employment.
Name, title, company, dates.
That is the heuristic checklist. If your CV passes that initial test, if those 4 elements align with what they are subconsciously looking for, only then will the recruiter slow down.
They finally take the exit.
Exactly. They exit the highway and extend their reading time to maybe 20 or 30 seconds to actually read your bullet points.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here, because this feels fundamentally broken.
Fair enough.
Let's say I single-handedly cured a rare disease, right? Or I saved a Fortune 500 company from total bankruptcy. But my dates of employment are formatted weirdly, or my previous company name is buried in a paragraph, interrupting that Z pattern.
Right. Yeah.
Are you telling me they won't even see my major life accomplishment? How is that an effective way to find top-tier talent?
Well, it is a highly flawed system when you look at it from the perspective of an individual applicant. It is absolutely possible, and in fact, really common, for a brilliant candidate to be discarded just because of a formatting quirk.
That's so discouraging.
It is, but you have to view it through the lens of risk and volume management. The recruiter is not looking for the needle in the haystack during those first 6 seconds. They are simply trying to quickly clear away the hay.
Clear the hay. Right.
If your formatting breaks their visual flow, their brain registers that interruption as friction. And in a pile of 1,000 resumes, cognitive friction equals an immediate rejection.
That is deeply frustrating.
Yeah.
But I guess if we flip the perspective, it is also incredibly clarifying.
How so?
Because if we know exactly the path the eye takes, and we know exactly what 4 elements they prioritize, we can reverse engineer the entire document. We can build a resume to deliver maximum impact directly on that Z pattern path.
Yes, that is the pivotal mindset shift. You have to stop treating your resume like an autobiography and start treating it like a highly targeted advertisement.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because a great way to think about a successful CV is to liken it to a 6-second Super Bowl ad.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Think about the mechanics of that. You have 6 seconds. The company has paid millions of dollars for this slot. Or in your case, your dream job and future salary are on the line.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. That ad cannot have a slow cinematic buildup. It must be impactful, the value proposition must be instantly clear, and it must be memorable before the viewer changes the channel.
The Super Bowl ad framework is brilliant because it forces ruthless editing. You can't fit everything in. So, what is the winning arsenal for your ad?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Let's break down those critical touch points on the visual highway. First, you need a powerful header. This addresses the name and title part of the eye tracking data. You need your name to be the largest text on the page, your professional title immediately underneath it, and ideally a value tagline right at the top.
The idea of a tagline is so smart. Instead of just writing a generic title like software engineer, you write software engineer with 5+ years optimizing processes that save 30% in operational costs.
Yes, exactly. Boom.
Boom.
Mm-hmm.
In 1 second, they know who you are, what you do, and what your exact return on investment is.
That ROI is the perfect hook, which leads the eye right into the summary. And the summary is where so many highly qualified people fail.
Why?
Because the summary must be incredibly concise. 3 to 5 lines maximum. It needs to be entirely focused on hard achievements and how you solve problems for the company. You must ruthlessly eliminate generic fluff.
Oh, like what?
Words like proactive, dynamic, go-getter, or, team player.
Oh, absolutely. If I see proactive team player on a dating app profile, I'm immediately swiping left.
Right. It tells you nothing.
It is an empty vessel of a phrase. It means absolutely nothing. So if generic adjectives don't work, what actually anchors the scanning eye? It has to be quantified logic, which brings us to one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal. Numbers.
Numbers are visually magnetic. Remember that the brain is scanning for patterns, not really reading language yet. A dense block of alphabetical text is just visually tiring.
Yeah, it blurs together.
But a percentage sign, a dollar sign, or a specific numeral stands out structurally from the alphabet. It breaks the visual monotony.
That makes sense.
When you write, led a team of 12 people, increasing sales by 45%, those digits act as physical hooks for the scanning eye, stopping the Z pattern and forcing the recruiter to actually read the achievement.
And to make sure those numbers pop, we really have to talk about the visual anatomy of the page. You are essentially designing a runway for the recruiter's eyes.
A runway, yes.
You need legible sans serif fonts, plenty of white space so the brain isn't overwhelmed, strategic bolding for job titles, and short, punchy bullet points. It actually reminds me of a brilliant practical exercise, the friend test.
The friend test is arguably the best way to pressure test your visual hierarchy.
It's like a high-stakes flashcard memory game.
Yeah.
You take your printed resume, you walk up to a friend who doesn't know the intricate details of your daily job, you show the paper to them for exactly 6 seconds, and then you literally snatch it away.
Just rip it right out of their hands.
Exactly. Then you ask them, what do you remember? If they don't immediately spit back your core profession and your single biggest quantified achievement, your runway is broken.
It really is that simple.
You have to go back and redesign the document until the most important things are the only things a human eye can catch in 6 seconds.
It forces you to be entirely unsentimental about your own career.
Which is hard.
It is. You might be incredibly proud of a minor side project from 5 years ago, but if it is cluttering the page and diluting your core message during the friend test, it has to be cut.
So what does this all mean? We've talked about how to build the perfect runway, but what kind of obstacles cause the recruiter's brain to crash entirely? Like, are there absolute deal breakers that kill the 6-second window?
Oh, there are definitely fatal errors, and they operate on that psychological principle of cognitive friction we mentioned earlier. The most universally fatal deal breaker is a grammatical or typographical error.
Why is a typo so fatal, though? I mean, people make mistakes.
Yeah.
Does writing manager without the second unner really mean someone is a bad accountant or a bad designer?
It's not about evaluating your soul or your core competence. It's about the mechanics of reading.
Yeah.
When the brain is heuristically scanning what psychologists call system 1 thinking, it is operating fast, automatically, and effortlessly.
It's in the zone.
Right. But when the eye hits a misspelled word or a jarring grammatical error, it acts like a massive pothole. It physically jolts the brain out of that fast flow state and forces it into system 2 thinking, which is slow, analytical, and requires effort.
Oh, I see.
That jolt causes immediate psychological annoyance. And in a highly competitive market, the recruiter associates that annoyance with your candidacy. It signals a lack of attention to detail, and it is almost always unforgivable.
So the typo isn't just a mistake. It's an unforced error that ruins the recruiter's flow state. That makes perfect sense.
Precisely. Other friction points include cluttered designs with loud colors that overwhelm the visual cortex, vast blocks of unfiltered experience that hide the relevant data, and length.
Length is a big one.
Huge. Unless you are a senior academic with decades of published research, your CV should be 1 to 2 pages, maximum.
No novels.
No novels. And keep in mind, this philosophy extends to your LinkedIn profile, too. If your resume survives the 6 seconds, the next step is usually clicking your LinkedIn. They are scanning that as well. You need a clean professional photo, a headline that hits as hard as your resume tagline, and an about section that gets straight to the point.
Okay, wait. We have spent all this time detailing how to optimize a Z pattern for human eyes, how to use white space, and how to manage a recruiter's cognitive load.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine recently told me that human beings don't even look at the resume first anymore. Is that true? Are we actually formatting for robots?
You are hitting on the central paradox of modern job hunting.
I knew it.
The invisible wall standing in front of the human recruiter is the ATS, the applicant tracking system. Before those 6 human seconds even begin, your application almost always has to pass through a robotic parsing algorithm.
How did that parsing actually work? Because I imagine an algorithm isn't looking for a beautifully designed Z pattern with lots of nice white space.
It isn't looking at design at all. When you upload your beautiful, visually balanced PDF, the ATS strips away all of your formatting.
Oh, no.
It flattens the document into a raw string of text. It is looking for exact keyword matches from the job description. If the job requires agile project management and you wrote flexible team leadership, the algorithm docks your score.
Just because of the synonym?
Yes. If you don't hit a certain keyword density threshold, the system rejects you automatically. Human eyes never even see the page.
But that creates a massive design paradox. If I use a sleek, modern 2-column layout to guide the human's eye down the page, what does the ATS do with that?
It completely scrambles it.
Are you serious?
Many older ATS parsers read strictly left to right, straight across the page. So if you have your skills in a left column and your work experience in a right column, the robot reads them mashed together into a nonsensical sentence.
Yeah, this is a nightmare.
You really have to thread the needle. You must use clean, standard formatting, no invisible tables, no crazy graphics, so the robot can parse the text. But you must also use bolding, bullet points, and numbers so that when the robot hands it to the human can scan it in 6 seconds. This raises an important question, though, about the systemic design of this entire process, because when you combine a rigid robotic filter with a hyper-fast, heuristic-driven human scan, you enter some very murky territory regarding who gets left behind.
You mean the fact that we are flattening complex human beings into keywords and rapid-fire visual assumptions?
Yes. When human beings make complex decisions in 6 seconds, unconscious bias is mechanically inevitable.
Because of the heuristics.
Exactly. Our heuristic shortcuts are built entirely on our deepest societal conditioning. The eye scans the name section, and within a fraction of a millisecond, assumptions are subconsciously made about gender, ethnicity, or cultural background.
Right.
They scan the graduation dates, and age bias automatically kicks in.
It's like, imagine trying to read a deeply complex piece of classic literature like Moby Dick or Pride and Prejudice, but you were only allowed to speed read it in 30 seconds.
Okay, I like this.
You might catch the most basic plot points, like, okay, there's a big whale, got it.
Right. Big whale.
But you entirely lose the nuance. You lose the subtext, the character development, the beauty of the prose. Modern recruiting feels like we are speed reading human beings.
That is a phenomenal way to articulate it. You get the plot points, but you entirely miss the person. And the industry is grappling with this mechanical flaw. Companies are obsessing over the speed of the screen, but they are realizing that in doing so, they are discarding highly diverse, incredibly capable talent whose experiences simply don't fit into a perfectly scannable cookie-cutter mold.
Which hurts the companies in the long run.
Exactly. To engineer around this bias, forward-thinking organizations are increasingly turning to blind recruitment.
What does that look like?
This is where the ATS is programmed to strip away names, graduation dates, and sometimes even the names of universities, presenting only the raw skills and achievements to the human recruiter.
Oh, that's smart. It forces the human to evaluate the data without the societal shortcuts. That is fascinating. But looking forward, if the volume of applications keeps increasing, where does this end? Does AI just take over completely?
The theory gaining traction right now is that artificial intelligence might actually be the tool that re-injects humanity into the process.
Wait, robots making it more human?
I know it sounds counterintuitive, But if AI algorithms become sophisticated enough to move beyond dumb keyword parsing, if they can actually understand the context and trajectory of a candidate's non-traditional experience, they could handle that massive volume instantly and fairly.
Ah, so letting the advanced robots do the heavy lifting so the humans are freed up to do the actual connecting.
Exactly. If the AI can accurately build a shortlist from 10,000 resumes, the human recruiter no longer has to spend their days staring at paper for 6 seconds at a time. They can spend 30 minutes having a nuanced conversation with a candidate. It uses technology to balance speed with depth.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today, from the cognitive science of eye movements to the paradox of robotic parsers. And I want to make sure you, the listener, walk away with an empowered perspective.
Because it can feel overwhelming.
It really can. But the 6-second rule is not a death sentence for your career aspirations. It is simply an invitation to be highly strategic. You are not compromising your unique identity by optimizing your resume. You are just learning to fluently speak the language of the gatekeeper.
The structural tricks, the quantified numbers, the clean formatting, those are just the keys to unlock the door.
Passing the 6-second test just gets you into the room. The interview is where your true personality, your cultural fit, and your passion, the things that actually dictate long-term success, can finally take center stage. So clear the cognitive friction, build a flawless visual runway for that Z pattern, and satisfy the ATS. But never forget to invest in the real you through networking, constant upskilling, and maintaining your authenticity.
The resume proves you can do the job, but the human interaction proves you are the right person to do it with.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on what we just discussed about the future of artificial intelligence.
Okay.
If ATS algorithms and AI become so incredibly advanced that they completely take over that initial visual scan, will the 6-second rule eventually shrink to a millisecond rule?
Wow.
And if the ultimate filter for our careers becomes entirely non-human, an algorithm processing your entire life's work in the literal blink of an eye, how will we ever prove the uniquely human traits like resilience, potential, and grit that the data insists are the true markers of talent? You hit send, you blink, and a machine decides your future. How do you design a resume for a reader that doesn't have eyes?